What would happen if you built a portfolio based on the worst and most unethical companies in the world? What would that look like? And what would their performance be like? Today we're going to answer that question. I started thinking about this because there's been a lot of talk about ethical investing. Millennials and Gen Z are typically looking towards more ethical investments. But a lot of the ethical investing stuff is simply greenwashing. There's been all sorts of allegations and all sorts of companies like Shell who might have a very strong ESG rating despite polluting the earth. So I wanted to look at what would our figures look like if we just took all morals out and actually looked at the morally dubious or the worst companies that I could think of. Here's what I came up with. Number one is Nestle. Nestle has been subject to one of the world's longest running boycotts for their irresponsible marketing of baby milk to mothers in the developing world. The company has also been criticized for a number of other business practices, including the use of unsustainable palm oil and genetically modified ingredients in its foods. The brands that you need to avoid if you want to stop buying with them is things like coffee, so Nescafe, Nespresso, soft drinks, they own San Pellegrino, cat food, Felix, Go Cat, Lily's Kitchen, and skincare, they part own L'Oreal. Plant milk, they also the new brand that's called Wunder. However, they have done pretty well over the last year. I'm not sure this is going to let me go any further back, but they've consistently been fairly strong in terms of their dividend performance. So Nestle have consistently increased their dividend since 2006, as far back as the data that I have in front of me right now goes. Typically, they've only raised their dividend by around 2 to 5% over the last 10 years or so, but in 2022 they increased it by 5%. The next company is Amazon. Amazon never fails to seem to be out of the spotlight for one reason or another, whether it be tax avoidance, for which they are under a boycott from all of us, or the treatment of workers at their fulfillment centers. They score badly in rating systems for all policies that ethicalconsumer.org rates people on, including environmental reporting, conflict mineral use, and supply chain management. They don't pay a dividend, but they have grown ridiculously well over the last 20 years. Obviously, we've all heard this story. I don't show you too much of their financials. They're very healthy, starting to slow down a little bit and not grow so much, but still having very strong quarters. And they tend to reinvest a lot of their money into the business to grow it further. We've all shopped at Tesco if you live in the UK. If you don't live in the UK, you probably won't do. However, Tesco have had a pretty terrible track record in many different avenues. So they've been involved in the Serious Fraud Office, putting squeeze on lots of its suppliers. They've had very questionable ethics around this. According to Greenpeace in 2021, it is still buying chicken and pork from Brazilian-owned companies Moy Park and Pilgrim's Pride. These are UK subsidiaries of Brazilian meat giant JBS, a company notorious for its role in forest destruction. Tesco continues to be one of the lowest scorers on ethicalconsumer.org. There are a lot of other alternatives. They trade very cheaply at a 9.5 PE, and their dividends at 4.2%. So very, very healthy, worth having a serious look at. And then finally, I wanted to look at a couple of others that I have considered over the years, who are British American Tobacco Company. Don't need to say too much about this. They pay a 9% dividend. They trade on a PE of 8. They have a very healthy balance sheet. However, they are killing people with their cigarettes. And the same could be said for Philip Morris as well. So I'm going to add them to this portfolio as well, and then I'm going to tally up and let's see what the forecast is on TRADING212. I'll be right back. Actually, before I finish, I really want to add Coca-Cola to this because you may not know, but Coca-Cola has a long history of workers' rights violations at its bottling plants. It's currently under 2 boycott calls linked to this issue at its plants in Colombia. It's also got an absolutely terribly poor track record on the environment, being accused of taking water supplies from rural communities and falsifying environmental data. Coca-Cola has been a plague on the earth in many respects. So we're going to add them to the unethical pie. This is what we've got so far. Now, what we are missing here is a couple of other terrible ones. Glencore is one of the worst companies. I read a book called Life for Sale, very interesting book. But basically, Glencore have done all sorts of things, such as funding the apartheid South African governments and various other terrible. They've basically propped up lots of dictatorships over the years because they want to get in and they're a commodities trading house. So they want to just get as much money as possible and prop up as much as possible. They pay an 8.6% dividend, and they do tend to do pretty well, but there are a lot of up and down in their balance sheet and their sort of income statement based on commodities prices generally, but I think they'll always be around. So I'm going to add them to the pie because they're terrible. And then I think we need to add in BP and Shell as well, because both of them they're oil and gas companies. We put that all together. The average annual return on these shares is only 5.65%, which is very interesting. So we're going to put it evenly across all of these, and we're going to see how that goes. Let's just call it unethical investing. And then I'm going to actually deposit some money. So we're going to see what happens in that portfolio. I hope it does badly. I'm putting £500 in. I'm going to leave it and just reinvest everything that comes out of that portfolio. So this has been buying the most unethical companies I could find. What do you think? Think that's a good list of bad companies?